There's a phrase you've heard many times before, but I bet you didn't know the history that it has. It's a phrase that's been around longer than all of us. Here it is. Hot mess. Did you know that this phrase goes all the way back to the 1800s? What do you think it meant in the 1800s? Well, a hot mess referred to, do you have any idea? In the 1800s, a hot mess referred to food, like in a mess hall or a mess kit for soldiers. Then, in the 1900s, it took on a different meaning. In the 1900s, a hot mess referred to a dangerous environment, like a firefight where a group of soldiers was in a super dangerous situation. And they would say they've gotten themselves into a hot mess. But now, with the evolution of the word, a hot mess is actually defined as a good-looking disaster, an attractive disaster. Somebody that has some portion of their life in obvious disarray, yet they remain somewhat functional and still very attractive. Things aren't going well, they've created a mess, they're in a mess is happening around them, and yet they're still functional. They can show up for work, they can show up for school, but if you look at their circumstances, there's a mess going on somewhere. They look better than their circumstances. And maybe you or I, we could post our own picture for the definitions right on Wikipedia, because it's what we do. Regardless of what's going on at home, we show up at work, we show up at school, we show up at the t-ball game or a friend's house, and we smile. Because we've got this mess going on somewhere in our lives, but we just clean up good. That's the nature of a hot mess. Maybe you've gotten yourself into a financial mess because of debt or maybe even something that was beyond your control. And you said, oh, my finances are a mess. Or maybe it's a family mess. Or maybe a marriage that isn't going so well or it was going well for a while and then something happened. Some of you are going through a dating mess right now and you're trying to figure it out. Should I stay or should I go? We get in all sorts of relational messes. You can have health messes. Maybe you've let your health go or maybe it's something beyond your control. It can be any area of life. The point is this. The thing that we all have in common is this. Life is just messy for all of us. Sometimes it's messy because we create the mess, and sometimes we just look up or look around and suddenly there's just a mess all around us. This is just the way life is. But here's the good news. The good news is simple. It's not just you. It's not just your life. It's not just your family. It's not just your marriage. It's not just your GPA or your job. Sometimes people email me or they call me and they want to get together for a counseling session and they start to mention like their mess is so unique or they're embarrassed about it. And I always say the same thing. If you can tell me something I haven't heard before, something I haven't helped someone with before, I'll buy you coffee or I'll buy you lunch, because we just all have messes. And your mess isn't unique to you. Other people struggle with the same things. So if you have a mess, welcome to the crowd. So then what should we do about it, right? What should we do about our messes? And should we refuse to change? No, obviously not, right? Should we refuse to grow? No. Should we refuse to reach out and reach our potential? No. We all need to change. We all need to grow. Should we compare ourselves to others? No, definitely not. I respect Jesus a lot, and Jesus talks about this in the Bible. He talks about how we're not supposed to be critics when it comes to other people and their messes. It's in the book of Matthew in the Bible, and basically what Jesus says is this. Here's a paraphrase of what he says. He says everyone's got a mess. Why are you looking at your friend's mess? You know what? Just go ahead and look at your own, because you've got a big enough mess in your own life to deal with. That's what he says. You need to keep moving. Jesus basically says, look, before you get all amped up about the mess that someone else's life has in it, go look in the mirror. Because we've all got a mess. We can all look into our own mirror and see a mess. So, properly dealing with our messes begins with a mirror. And not some kind of trick mirror either. In Fort Lauderdale, there's this Westin hotel on the beach that when you go down the hall and you're waiting for the elevator, they've got these mirrors. You just look good. I just look in the elevator mirror and I'm like, wow, I'm so good looking. Tonight's going to be so fun. I don't know what they do with those mirrors. I look the best in that mirror. It's not real accurate though. And you don't want to look in a funhouse mirror either where it just makes you all warped or whatever. Maybe like Snapchat lenses where one makes you look really good and another one makes you look really goofy. Don't use that stuff. Instead, it's just a real mirror. It's an accurate mirror. We just need to reflect honestly about ourselves and our messes if we're going to get better. Here's the deal. We all just mess up from time to time. It's just the way life is. And when we mess up, the first thing we need to do about it is this. We need to look in the mirror and we need to say, nobody's perfect. You just look in the mirror and say, but nobody's perfect. If you think nobody is perfect, you're actually agreeing with God. It's biblical. Jesus had a brother, James, and James said this. He sums it up. He says, we all make many mistakes. Here's the point when we say we're not perfect. Once we acknowledge our messes, we're a baby step away from acknowledging God. Because when you acknowledge this is so big, when you say nobody's perfect, you're actually saying that there is a perfect. There's this some perfect out there that nobody is. You're saying that there's something that you know you don't live up to. It exists. You know it exists and you fall short. And personally acknowledging God is so important because sometimes you make a mess you can't get out of by yourself. We've been in holes that others created or that we created for ourselves that are just so deep. And we look up when we realize, oh, I just can't get out of this on my own. If you have a mess in your life, if your life is a mess, if you're a hot mess, if you have a mess in one part of your life but you're trying to look good and stay functional, I get it. We all do it sometimes. We all have something in common. It's the mess. We all know that we're not perfect. So I just want you to try two things. It's a little bit weird, but stick with me because they've helped me out a bunch. First, when you see someone else's mess, instead of being critical, instead of being judgmental, instead of comparing, which isn't good for you, I just want you to whisper under your breath to yourself this phrase, who am I to judge? Or you can say, who am I to compare if you like. I say, who am I to judge? When I say that, it makes all those other problems go away. All their stuff just goes away and I can just think about myself. And then, I want you to change the way you think about yourself. In the Bible, God says that we're not supposed to copy the behavior and the customs of the world. It's in the book of Romans. He says instead to transform into a new person by changing the way you think. These days, that's called changing your mindset. You just look in the mirror and you say, nobody's perfect. I know that. You know that. God knows that. But then you say, I'm going to be okay. Get your mindset right so you can get your life right. Then you can wrap up your minute of personal time in the minute of cleansing yourself of this mess by just asking God for some help. You just say, God, here's the mess in my life. Would you help me? I can't do it on my own. Now, if you'd ever like to talk more about this, you can text us, you can email us, you can make a connection with us, and we can talk through some of this stuff with you.